unfortunately, Maddie's not going to be able to make it, so it's just me and Honey.
Oh well.
It's not like you folks are going to complain. All right, so we have 7 basic ideas. Actually, Mono's going to partially be here for it because we have some ideas from them. But, Honey, why don't you run down the 7 things that we got to talk about today?
So, we start with the basic plot, premise, why are people fighting for this particular fighting game. We are discussing in our idea the concept of a Arkhamverse fighting game set within the Arkhamverse. Could be any point in time based on when you want to do the game. Then we'll discuss any special mechanics or gimmicks for the game that we think might be good and might define some of the characters that we want to build up. Then we define our Shotos, the all-rounders, middle ground characters who are sort of don't have any specific specializations. Then the Zoners, the people who play at range. The Grapplers, the people who play slow and really bulky. And then the Rushdowns, who are hyper-aggressive. And then just our Weirdos.
Which is basically code for, can they do something really weird? Then they're in here. Oh.
Exactly.
Yeah, Fishbowl can't make it. That is all good. December is going to be an interesting thing to try and do a podcast for. Yeah. So I kind of have a basic flesh for it back on it. You guys can't see it. So I'm going to go with a couple of very basic overarching story ideas that I had that I want to run with Honey and see how it goes. Either this takes place during a modified version of Protocol 10, which involves a fighting tournament. So shit's going down, and Hugo Strange has organized some sort of super special fighting tournament that Babs has intervened, and Batman, story-wise, has to go investigate and stop. Or we have some sort of shenanigan thingamajig involving Gotham's occupation by the militia and the Arkham Knight. I'll admit it's not a lot, but I think it's interesting enough to kind of bounce ideas off of.
Mm-hmm.
So
for me,
go ahead.
For me, my story gimmick premise idea is that I'm basing mine off of Protocol 10 as well. Though in my version of things, it is taking place immediately after the events of Arkham City, where the criminals realize, oh, this is all gonna end very soon. We don't want that! And so they decide to host a tournament to make themselves appear as vicious and violent as they can, to basically try to intimidate Gotham into keeping Arkham City around.
Interesting idea. I actually really like that, because I mean, the Arkham City plot, I think, plays the best into the Arkham Fighting Game idea, for one reason or another. So, as much as like Arkham Knight, like the militia grab people. Oh, I remember who my last one was going to be. But I think Arkham City, like in general, kind of makes the most amount of sense.
Exactly.
And we're not going to go super deep into it. It's a fighting game. Like, I know Arkham goes super deep in the story, and NetherRealm, for better or for worse, has been trying to break that stereotype, but let's be honest, people. It's a fighting game. A lot of the story is told through beating the crap out of your friends, so...
And the closest thing Netherwinter ever did to a story was, here's the child of these 2 other kids.
Netherwinter?
Neverwinter, the people who do these games.
Oh, NetherRealm.
NetherRealm.
Fair enough. Like for like an actual story thing, yeah. Anywho, so that's kind of our overarching story. For special mechanics and gimmicks, I actually have a couple.
I do too.
I have technically 4 points on this. I'm going to start with mechanics. I think overall it should be a 3D fighter, like a Tekken or a Soul Calibur or something like that. I feel like Soul Calibur's speed makes sense because I feel Tekken is overall a little bit too slow, but with some of the technicalities from Tekken that can help enhance things a little bit that way. There will be obviously a training mode, and I think it's a fun little detail, like there'll be tutorials that you'll play through in order to get a handle of the controls of the game, and they're actually headed by Oracle, who is going to give you verbal instructions like, okay, Batman, move forward, move backwards, jump, that sort of thing. I really like the training mode specifically from MK11 because it gives you things like frame data and movement placement and things like that. But I would add hitbox viewers because, my God, it's just a personal gripe for me. I have no idea how half of the moves in NetherRealm games hit behind people. So, and then Tekken did something really cool, kind of shittily because they put it behind a goddamn paywall, but where they would let you give you an idea as to what's your best punish for a certain situation. And I would like to take that and implement it and call it Oracle's Recommendations, which has Babs showing how best to punish certain attacks. The announcers, I'll have the announcers and then I'll go over to you and then I'll talk stages. The announcers, there's a few. I was going to go Hugo Strange or Scarecrow, depending on the story we follow, as the default, but I think the default should actually be the Bat Computer as an announcer, begin, and all that. If you complete the first set of tutorials, you get Oracle as an announcer. Raish is an announcer if you beat the arcade mode with all the characters. Quincy Sharp is an announcer if you complete 10 fights of any kind in any Arkham Asylum stage. We'll talk about that later. And I have Riddler. If you unlock the Riddler's Lair stage, he comes as an announcer as well. So let's go over to you now, honey, before I talk stages.
Okay, so we've talked about this a little before the podcast, so we have a few similar ideas. One of them being the 3D Tekken Soul Calibur style fighting game. My big gimmick that I would add to the mechanic is rotating periods of shadow and light, because a big mechanical thing of Arkham is it's not just a beat 'em up, it is a stealth game. And stealth is something you could incorporate into a fighting game if you design around it, where you have parts of the map being covered in darkness, and your character has to like strafe around to get into the darkness, and the darkness would you'd have rotating spotlights or spotlights that are pointed at certain directions and then move to point at a different direction. And so each of these little areas would have points where you can see and then points where you can't. And so if you want to be able to get a stealth attack on somebody, hitting them without them knowing what sort of attack you're doing, you could duck into the shadow and then do your attack. And I think that works really well in a 3D fighting game with the range of movement and the ability to just strafe as an action.
Yep. I was playing a little bit of Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance for a thing that I'm totally going to be doing next year. And playing a 3D Mortal Kombat game feels weird when you've mostly played the 2D games, but it's pretty natural. You can still jump, you can still sidestep and whatnot. It's just, you just have to kind of get used to the new control scheme, and bam, there you go.
Exactly.
I
would definitely also include the Arkham versus combo supers, where instead of you needing to perform certain button combos to do a super, you have to build a combo meter, which will then unlock the super, which you could do after the combo meter is pulled off.
Like a more traditional super.
Yeah. They wouldn't require a specific combination of super inputs. They would just require you to basically keep a combo going, like how in Killer Instinct, where just keeping the combo going is part of the mechanic. In this situation, it would be, okay, as long as you could just keep chaining your attacks together one after another, your combo meter extends, and when you get to combo 3 or combo 5, you get to do certain supers that consume meter and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
But they don't consume that much meter because the trade-off is that you can only perform after certain amounts of combo.
True. And even if we were to just do a traditional meter system where you build meter if you get hit, or you build meter by landing special moves or whatnot, kind of like how Harley builds her meter in Arkham Knight, and how traditional fighting games build meter, you can pull a page from Street Fighter 4, which, in a funny sense, lets you pull off up to 3 different super moves per round, or per fight, depending on how things go. Like, you have 1 meter for super move, that makes sense, and you build that by landing hits, and then you build up the other super meter by taking hits. That's the Ultra combo. So...
Yeah, they did that in Mortal Kombat 9, I believe, as well.
They kind of did. With MK9, what they did is that you have 3 bars of meter, and you can spend the bars of meter on different things. So 1 bar of meter is needed to EX a move, like, say, turn Sub-Zero's Ice Ball into an Ice Beam that freezes for longer. You get 2 bars for a combo breaker, and then you have all 3 bars for a full-out super move.
Exactly.
But what we could do is, if I were to, let's say, Batman, because he's easy, and I play a lot of Arkham Origins, so I kind of have an idea here. So, Batman has 4 general, 5 sort. Well, he has quite a few, but he generally has 5 general super type things he could do. He can do a bat swarm to stun people. He can do an instant takedown. He can do a disarm and destroy. He can do a special ground takedown. And he can, if he has enough meter, like it's a 12 hit instead of 5 hits, he can basically burn free flow focus to jack up his gadgets. Like, the explosive gel knocks down up to 3 people normally, but when you have times 12 combo, I kid you not, you could knock down 20 plus people in one fell swoop. Because it's just a much bigger explosion. So if we were to use the 3-bar system from Mortal Kombat 9 for 3 different supers for Batman, we could have level 1 be an enhanced version of his gadget. Like, Batclaw Slam does more damage. Right?
Right.
It's like an EX version of his special moves. Then level 2 is something a little bit bigger. Bat Swarm, which stuns the opponent, or maybe he gets access to a smoke bomb or something like that. And then level 3 is a super move that would be a little more cinematic and could be a combination of his instant takedown techniques.
I would maybe make it just like, instead of like it being a 1-bar, 2-bar, 3-bar system, if you combo with the combo system, it's just one combo move, but the super move does more incremental damage or secondary effects if you perform the super during a certain amount of combo chain. So if you do your super, you do the basic Bat Swarm super after a 3 combo move, it does its X thing. But if you get the combo up to 6, it does additional things, and if you get it up to 12, it does the really big thing.
Right, and that can be as simple as adding extra range to even completely blinding the opponent and letting you be able to pull off a stealth attack, which, if we could talk about that stealth attack for a second, stealth takedowns are like the core of Predator encounters in Mortal Kombat,
Exactly.
in Arkham. And if we, I said Mortal Kombat, yes, because just because we have ninjas, we have to deal with stealth. No, the ninjas are bright colors, people. But with the stealth takedowns, did you ever play Harley Quinn's Revenge?
I don't think so. Pretty sure my game crashed every time I tried to play it.
Oh dear. So there's Arkham City in particular has 2. Well, and Arkham Origins kind of has an example of this with Deadshot, where you have a Predator boss where you can do silent takedowns with the takedown smash for extra damage, but they'll alert everybody to your position. So using stealth takedowns in a sort of combat setting makes sense, but because it can be seen as cheap if you kind of just get them all the time, I think what would be cool to see is that, yes, you could do your silent takedown and do the takedown smash for extra damage, like say 5 to 10% total, but you both have a cooldown and you're automatically like alerted. Like, you are always focused on, even in the dark, for a short period of time, so that the opponent has at least a fighting chance of being able to mollywop you.
You could also just sort of tie it to meter, where the stealth grab is just a command grab that requires a bit of meter to spend. So you can't do the thing until you've gotten your meter back, and so like you could make it and since it's a pretty powerful thing, being able to combo being able to command grab the person from the shadows without them seeing what's going on, you could make it cost a little more. Like maybe it costs 50% meter, as half your meter bar to be able to do this the stealth grab.
Yeah, if we follow the 3-bar system of sorts that we're doing, which is 33, 66, 100, or 33, 67, 100, because one of them has to be 33, 34. Maybe you need 2 bars in order to do a silent takedown, because that's free damage.
Exactly.
So it's an unblockable that does a sizable amount of damage. I would also make the silent takedowns always do more damage than standard throws, because I hate that in Mortal Kombat 11, a lot of the time the command grabs do less damage than normal throws.
Well, I mean, the fact that these also require meter would definitely allow for these things to do a shit ton of damage.
Yeah, like, and it's not even like a shit ton. It's like, oh, that's meaty, like 20-25% damage. That's a fairly basic combo in a lot of Mortal Kombat games. It's nothing to sneeze at.
You could also just make the one of the big requirements also is that command grabs can't go off of combos. Just to make it like, because these are supposed to be stealth attacks.
Okay.
These cannot be made into a
yes,
game.
Yes, you cannot combo in. Yes, you cannot combo into. I think that kind of goes without saying, because because in the Arkham games, if you hit somebody, you can't do a silent takedown immediately afterwards. So
exactly.
So you can't combo into a silent takedown, but if they are launched for whatever reason, then a character with a command grab, like for instance, I have for an example, Killer Croc and Bane, they can still combo into their command grabs.
It's just the stealth grabs do not be combo.
Yeah, exactly, because it doesn't make sense to be able to combo into a stealth thing if you sucker punch someone first. Which creates this cool little trade-off, because stealth takedown's relatively easy. It's just one input and then you do 25%. But if you sucker punch somebody into a full combo, then the combo could theoretically do more damage, but you need to be faster on the buttons with it. You know what I mean? So it kind of creates that skill gap thing. It's like, oh, there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing a silent takedown, but if you can also do, like, stealth combos, basically, that could be really hype and super cool to see. The only tricky thing was that would be, how do you keep track of your position on the map without, like, if it's Batman versus Catwoman, how does Batman keep track of himself in the shadows without Catwoman seeing him? You know what I mean?
I would just basically make it a skill stealing where you can't see them. You can't see yourself in this situation. But the thing is also, because the shadows aren't stable. They're not just staying in one place. Because the spotlights are moving. That means where the shadows are would also be moving. That you would have to. You really only would have like stealth shadow for like a second or two before the shadow goes away, unless you're actively strafing to stay in the shadow, in which case you're going to know where you are because you're strafing. You have a mental note of where you're moving whenever you do the strafe.
We can take something from Godzilla Save the Earth here. This is a really weird tangent, but it's a 3D fighter sort of thing, but Godzilla Save the Earth has a free run button. If you hold L2, you basically disengage from the opponent and you can run around freely as the monster that you're playing as. So, what if in the shadows you can push block, let's say, because you're not blocking in the shadows, to disengage from the opponent, and the opponent will know you've disengaged because it'll be a different idle animation, so they have to try and manually look for you. But you can move around in the dark. You can even, but you could, just so that people can keep track, and try to find you. There's maybe every third step you take leaves a ripple. Maybe, or the sort of dust that comes off your feet when you run. Yeah, something like that. Just because it's something that skilled players can keep an eye out for, but at the same time it helps you because sometimes when I play a character with invisibility like Reptile in Mortal Kombat X, I lose track of what the hell I'm doing. So I think that should just be an inherent skill ceiling that
players should have to adapt to learn how to fight invisibly.
And part of that is watching for subtle clues, like the dust and whatnot.
Exactly.
Because that's part of the skill set, is like recognizing the signs of, uh-oh, I'm going to get stealth grabbed here, I need to be ready. And what could be super cool is if your character has a certain amount of meter, like let's say both characters have 2 bars, and the aggressor tries to do a silent takedown, and the defender has 2 bars, they can break out of the silent takedown.
Okay. We can. Well, actually, I mean, if the game is very combo oriented, you're definitely going to be wanting to have some sort of guaranteed escape option for all players.
Yeah, and
because you don't want the game to be rewarding one person for going into a 12 combo attack, and then just having the other person just sort of sit there while they're getting 12 comboed.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what we could do is that if you're getting comboed, a combo escape or reversal costs 1 bar. Just 1 bar, real easy, and it would let you, I think what would be really cool is if you choose to break out of the combo, it would reset the neutral, but you also return half of the damage. Like, let's say Batman combos Catwoman, and Catwoman takes 20% damage in the combo by the time she breaks. She can then use a proper breaker for 1 bar to do 10% damage to Batman.
Okay.
Or she can try and get plus frames by doing a combo escape, and if she escapes the combo just right, she goes into the shadows. It would also cost 1 bar, but if you also happen to have all 3 bars, you escape into the shadows, and then you could do a silent takedown and do 25% damage if the opponent spent all their bar and can't escape the silent takedown. But then
in the game GNT4 or Clash of Ninja 4, or the entire Clash of Ninja franchise, the inherent mechanic of the game is an instant teleport that all characters can do for just sort of half a meter, and doing so lets you just if you're being hit by an opponent, you can just tap this the straight button to just teleport away, spending that meter. And what it does, it doesn't put you to neutral, it instantly teleports you behind the opponent to do a reversal attack on them.
Yes.
And you could basically do that where, okay, if I'm being hit by anything, if my opponent hits me, or my opponent tries to do a command grab on me or anything, I can just hit the strafe button or whatever to be able to escape, and then I just sort of you would have well, I mean, we've already got like 1 billion counter animation sequences in the games where like the person does an attack and the person blocks and then locks them down and throws them. And you can just have every character have their own unique counter animation sequence that they do in response to a specific
So you're
attack
implementing the Arkham-style counter system as an escape.
Yeah.
I love it. You know what? I don't, as much as I like the idea of having 2 different systems to break, I think for simplicity's sake, your breaker is your counter attack.
Exactly.
And I really like that idea. And if you have 2 bars, and in the situation before where Catwoman is breaking out of Batman's silent takedown, it doesn't, Catwoman doesn't take any damage. It resets everything to neutral, but Batman loses the stealth advantage in that situation. So
you can even make it like the center of the ring is always lit up, and whenever somebody does a counter, they just sort of move the opponent to the center of the ring.
Totally, and maybe it's stage dependent because this is the perfect time to get to the stages. I've done something interesting with different stages where I have kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 main stages, and each stage has a sort of subset. Because I'm toying with the idea of some form of stage transition, but I don't know if that will be a thing. But in any case, for instance, we go to Arkham Asylum. We have the Arkham Asylum grounds, the outside, then intensive treatment, the main lobby, and the rooftop of the asylum. So you can have...
You could make an entire, 3-stage fight based off of the Bane fight.
Yeah, exactly. And for each of these stages, these sub-stages, they would each have a different lighting setup. So if I go to the next one, Arkham City has 4 sub-stages. Monarch Theater, the top of the Wonder Tower, the prison gates, and the steel mill. they can have different lighting settings. So, for instance, the Monarch Theater, it's lit by the theater screen, so half of the stage is lit up, but the other half is in the dark.
Or you can have the big, the big pit that's in the Joker's territory that you have to go down and go into the sewers.
Yeah.
You could have the outside area of that be a stage where instead of there being a center stage at all, you just have to strafe around the hole, and the lights could basically be swinging back and forth. So there's so you have to like basically strafe around, and the lights you're always gonna be bouncing between light and shadow, and there's not really like I can walk around the shadows. You're always going to end up popping into the light in those situations.
It's more of a opportunity moment thing.
Exactly.
And going into lights like Wonder Tower Top, it's fully lit, so there's no darkness, which will make for an interesting thing because, now you can't do silent takedowns, it's all offense. Or the Steel Mill is mostly dark, or dark enough to potentially hide in the dark, unless the stage lights up because it's a steel mill.
Yeah, you could have RNG related lighting up where like the forge kicks up again and then suddenly.
I wouldn't do RNG per se. I would definitely do it timing based. But
yeah, sorry, that's what I meant the timer.
Yeah, but like it would always start 5 seconds lit, 2 seconds dark. 5 seconds lit, 2 seconds dark. That sort of thing. Right. And the prison gates would be something similar to the spotlight idea, where there's spotlights of safety, but there's permanent blotches of darkness in between said lights where you can sneak around.
Right.
And the other stages are Gotham City Winter, Arkham Origins inspired, so the GCPD, Lacey Towers, Gotham Royal Hotel, and the Final Offer, like the arena in the Final Offer.
Absolutely needs to be one that's based on Wonder Town.
Wonder Town. Oh, yeah, yes. Well, there's Wonder Tower Top, but that does not mean that there isn't Wonder City.
Wonder City, that's what, and the little underground future city that's underneath Arkham City.
Exactly. So instead of so it would be Wonder Tower Top and then Wonder Tower City as the thing. And what would be kind of cool is that you could transition from the city to the tower in an extended transition, because the elevator ride is super slow in that game. So what you could do is that trigger the transition, but unlike a stage transition in Injustice where it's a cutscene, it's you're transitioning up and you're still fighting live.
Yeah, I was thinking like you could just put them in the elevator and then make the elevator be like the middle stage between the two of them.
Exactly. Yeah, that would be super sweet. And then you can kind of go back and forth if you want to be cheeky. Like, go up the elevator, go down the elevator, go up the elevator, go down the elevator. And then in Wayne Manor, we have the Armory, the Main Hall, the Batcave, and the Library for its stages. And then what I'm calling Gotham City Occupied for Arkham Knight rep. That's a militia checkpoint, which is just a random checkpoint with militia goons watching, the Abandoned Mall, Stag's Airship, and the GCPD Rooftop. And then there's 2 stages that don't have sub-stages, which is like the Clock Tower, which is your default training mode arena, as Babs can kind of simulate various settings. And then Riddler's Lair, which I think is just going to be the absolute, what the hell am I doing stage.
Another 3-stage thing you could do that would be really cool is Roz's Fever Dream area.
Ooh, Fever Dream Arena. Okay.
Where he fights in that twisting desert sandstorm area.
We'll call it Raish's Desert. And then the areas would be different subsections of each.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be super cool, because then you get the freaky effects and you have giant demon god Raish watching.
Exactly.
I had a thought. Interactables.
Definitely. Interactables are definitely they're a thing in the Arkham games where you have like minions will go and grab a box and throw it at you or something.
Yeah.
Or they'll try to grab weapons off the cache. You can definitely have boxes laying around that you can suddenly grab and throw at somebody. And in
Arkham Knight, specifically Arkham Knight, Batman, Robin, and Nightwing can steal bat baton type weapons and use them for themselves.
Okay.
As a temporary power-up. Like, it's unblockable and does, like, triple the damage, but they do eventually break.
That's a little too busted, I think. I think interactables should be single-use systems, but I think that they should be reused, sort of like the MK11 set hazards. Or sorry, not MK. So yeah, MK11 Injustice 2 set hazards, where there will be like there's a moving truck will just drop a crate onto the stage, and then your character can just sort of do an interactable where they like grab the crate and then throw it onto the opponent or something.
Totally, and you can have both consumable and reusable interactables. So let's say it's the final offer arena where people can grab weapons from. So you can grab a bat and use it and break it over somebody's head, and that's single use, sort of, because the bat is broken. But the bat can be replenished by somebody watching in the audience, and then you can go do it again. And then for the more powerful interactables, they're one use and that's it. For instance, fire extinguishers. Because not every character is going to have a smoke bomb, but certain arenas will have fire extinguishers you can throw to act as smoke bombs to put the opponent in stun and in darkness to give the opponent a free silent takedown attempt.
I'm not so sure about that. One, because I don't think having the ability to aim a projectile at the smoke alarm is really something you want to be doing. I feel that would kind of like distract the player from the immediate fight that's going on right there in front of them. And it might cause some control issues if they suddenly have to switch to a targeted accuracy system for their batarangs when they don't normally have to do that.
True, but I'm talking more, it's an interactable, it'll automatically lock onto the opponent, and then you try to aim, it would be like throwing a box. But in this case, it's throwing a fire extinguisher that causes a small smoke bomb effect, so that characters that don't have smoke bombs can try to get a taste of what that's like, you know?
I think in those situations, though, you could still basically make it a consumable situation. Because basically the way I'm seeing it is this would pretty much identically be like the Injustice 2 MK11 destructible environment, which I like. I liked how that system worked. That's kind of the way I see it sort of working.
Well, and you know, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, right? So...
original.
Indeedly doodly deedly. Alright, so this is where things are going to get interesting, because I haven't really listed them per se. Well, I did kind of end up listing it for the Shoto characters, but I feel like things are going to expand from here, and that's the Shoto characters. Who do we have as our Shotos? Honey, would you be so kind to very quickly post the chart that we are using as reference?
I'll do you one better and post my actual chart that I have, my filled up list ahead of time as a sort of spoiler for how things are. People can sort of see what these different archetypes look like.
Yeah, cool. And we're definitely not going to agree, I don't think. Yeah, no, we're definitely not agreeing on these because there's characters here I don't have. But
yeah, I'll do a basic system. There are a lot of videos online for defining character archetypes, but basically an all-rounder or Shoto archetype is the fundamentals. They have good reach. They have good positioning. They have They have all of the tools that everyone else has, but they don't really specialize in anything.
A really good example of that, and the most iconic example, is Ryu from Street Fighter. He has a projectile, he has an invincible wake-up, and he has a projectile dodging attack. Most characters have some form of this move, with other things as well. Like, Chun-Li has Kikoshin as her projectile. Sagat has Tiger Uppercut for his invincible wake-up. Dawson can slip under projectiles with certain attacks, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Next is the zoners, who specialize in keeping the opponent at a distance. This can either be a Lancer type character, which are like Dhalsims, where they have their hitboxes are extended to hit the opponent from a distance, but it's all connected to a singular animation sequence that can't be cut, versus a Fireball character like Guile, who they can launch the projectile and then keep moving or do other actions while the projectile's on the screen. Both are types of zoners. And then you'll see it. There's also the smaller subtype of zoners called trap zoners, which lay traps on the field that will do something once the opponent walks into them, but they don't fly at the opponent like a fireball will.
Exactly, and this is a common misconception because NetherRealm was really bad at this. Like, as much as I love NetherRealm, their definition of zoner is throw a bunch of crap at you, which is generally what a fireball zoner is. But there's while they have been kind of getting better with it for some characters like Jade and MK11 and Swamp Thing and Injustice 2, a lot of the times with NetherRealm, if they're a zoner, they're throwing crap at you. And that's one type of zoning, but there's the two others. There's setting up your traps is a really good example, like Predator and Mortal Kombat X in the Hunter variation with the snare traps. Mm-hmm. And the Lancer, that's just anybody who has a really long range, like Jade with her wiggle stick of doom.
Or Sagat.
Or who?
Sagat.
Or Sagat, yes, because Sagat has his projectile, but he's also so frickin' big that he himself is the lance.
Exactly.
And then grapplers, I know this one real well because I love these guys. They're your big guys. Like, you have your command grapplers, which are like Zangief. Their main shtick is to get close and grab you a bunch, and their grabs hurt a lot. Big boy, this is kind of your big brawler type. Like, he's actually got combos for somebody that big, but he's not refined. So somebody kind of like
the best example of a big boy is Abigail, whose name literally just means a big girl.
Yeah, like literally what I was gonna go with was Abigail from Street Fighter V, because that dude is 8 feet tall, and his whole thing is just being big and just bullying you. And that's
the usual defining characteristic that separates a big boy from other grappler types is just they usually have the most armor on all of their attacks. They can just power through everything, and they just have the most HP.
Yeah, their whole thing is be big and bully you, hence the name Big Boy. This one I'm not 100% sure. Can you refresh me on the beater?
The beater is basically Balrog, in a sense. They're basically they feel more like a rushdown, but because they're bulky, have command grabs that are really good, and tend to just be a bit more medium speed, I fit them more in the grappler type of thing, similar, so basically like a Balrog type character.
Right, where they can still hit you a bunch, but what they're really doing is they're keeping their surprise sucker punch locked.
Exactly.
If you hold, for those who don't know, in at least Street Fighter V, I think this is true in most Street Fighter games with Balrog, if you hold one of the punch buttons and keep holding it, you're steadily building a charge for what I think is called the countdown punch. So because every level he counts 1, 2, 3, all the way up to final, which is 10. And it takes a long time to charge up to level 10, but if you can charge all the way up to final, it's basically an instant knockout on most characters, regardless of health. But that whole time, he has to beat you up so that you don't interrupt the charge, and the whole time he's actually restricted. Like, if you choose to let go of Heavy Punch, you don't get access to, if you choose to charge Heavy Punch, you don't get Heavy Punch, because you have to hold the button down. So, you don't get heavy versions of certain special moves, or heavy versions of supers, or whatever. So
another example I would think of would be Lex Luthor from the original Injustice series, where he's not really a command grabber. His attacks don't really have that much armor, but you still know this guy is not a rushdown. He is slow, he is bulky, he's designed just to do really big chunks of damage with a single hit, and that's really what a beater is. They're designed to basically just punch you really hard with a slow big punch.
Yeah. The thing with Luthor, though, is that Luthor has the beater archetype, but he leans much heavier towards being a trap-type zoner. Because he has the orbs, and the mines, and the gravity well, and the lance. His whole thing is that, yes, he's trying to get in for the big hits, for the big combos, or like his unblockable lance, or charging up his armor so he could just ignore certain attacks. But while he has an element of beater to him, he's much more of a trap-type zoner character. And that leads into, like, yes, you can have your character generally fit these niches, but while Honey went in that direction, I just went general. Like, because you can do all kinds of crazy things with certain characters as zoners, and just go from there. Where is? I'll put a pin in that later. And next up is Rushdown, which I will very quickly talk about. Mix-up Rushdown characters Rushdown characters in general, they want to be in your face. They're the opposite of zoners. They want to get in close and mess you up in multiple different ways. We have mix-ups, so a character that specializes in mix-ups. So if you played Mortal Kombat X, you know about the 50-50 low overhead mix-ups. But then you go to something like Injustice, where it has cross-ups, which is another kind of mix-up. Or attacks that hit from behind when you're blocking. Which reminds me, I forgot to ask, are we doing a block button or are we doing back to block?
I think block works pretty well because for one, blocking is a central mechanic of the Arkham games, and you seem to be pretty commonly associated with the NetherRealm games, and they tend to have a block button. And I kind of the games I play usually just have press back to block.
Yeah.
But there could also be a dedicated block button if we wanted to go that route as well.
Yeah, it's one of those things where the tricky thing comes from mix-up characters. If you have a back to block, cross-ups all of a sudden become a lot scarier because you have to hold back to block, but if they cross over you, that's a problem. Or if they cross under you, that's another problem because they'll cross under you and mess up how you block, and then they could get their combos that way. The example that that Honey gave is Harley. Great, she's nuts. Perfect rushdown character. And then Speed is just get in, be fast, and blitz your opponent with fast attacks that allows them to punish things that most other characters can't. So
yeah, their attacks usually hit before anyone else's attacks can hit. So it doesn't. So they are usually the most unfair archetype really to play against, because especially for new players, where it just feels like you can't do anything to them because they just keep hitting you before you can do anything.
Exactly. Yeah. Actually, I remember. Wait. Yeah. He's a different kind of thing. And then we have Rekka, which is short for something in Japanese. I can never remember what exactly, but it was popularized by a character named Fei Long in the Street Fighter series, where their main thing is a special move that you can input repeatedly. So Fei Long has this 3-punch special move string that you have to do quarter circle forward plus punch 3 times to get all of the hits. So the thing where Rekka becomes cool is that the more you do, obviously you do more chip damage, but generally the less safe you are. So if you do the special move on block, and it's the first couple of hits, you might actually be safe. But if you go for the third one, you could get interrupted. So there's that give or take there. And it looks like you have Shiva there, which is something I could totally get behind. Now for the escape. Escape is Vega, basically. And I'll let Honey explain that while I type away a little more.
Yeah, escapes are... the best character I can use to describe escape is Vega, where the character is designed with a very fast mobility that both allows them to get in and out of a fight very quickly, so they can punish the opponent with their attacks and then jump out of reach before the opponent can hit you. And so they're very difficult to punish. They usually are. They don't deal a lot of crazy chip damage or have a lot of. They can usually, like Vega does a lot of damage, but they aren't necessarily have to deal big damage, but rather they're always safe on their attacks because they usually get out of the opponent's range after their attacks are all done.
Or they're hard to hit in the first place because one of Vega's most iconic attacks is he jumps to the wall, jumps off the wall, and then comes down from above, which can cross up, by the way.
Exactly.
So what his thing is that he can escape from a big attack that's coming and then punish you for going for that big attack, effectively.
Right. And next we come to the sort of catch-all term grouping, just the weirdos.
Which, this is basically just things that don't necessarily fit in any one thing because, well, they're weird. one of my favorite examples actually being here is the puppet fighter. Now, this is not a very common archetype in any fighting game. You almost exclusively see this in anime fighters, like Guilty Gear and Blaze Blue, that kind of thing. And what they do is that it's generally 2 versus 1, so you have 2 different characters, and one character, your main character, doesn't really do all that much on their own, but they can call an assist to help them do all of the things and tools, and sometimes the puppets can take hits for them. Another, a kind of a weird example that I think kind of works but doesn't really, but is kind of relevant to that, is the ice climbers.
Yes, they are probably the most infamous version of a puppet fighter in terms of casual circles.
Yeah, they're not the most adhesive to the puppet fighter concept, but in general they kind of fit that because you control one ice climber and the AI controls another ice climber, and you could do your wobbling shenanigans and whatnot.
The big thing about weird archetypes is these can easily fall into any of the other previously mentioned 4. They just usually have a very specific gimmick about them that makes it so this just doesn't work unless you categorize it as its own unique thing. Puppet fighters usually play into the zoner role, but there are plenty of rushdown puppet fighters as well, such as in Guilty Gear, the Shadow guy, I forget his name off the top of my head, but he is a rushdown puppet fighter. But also, I would count the ice climbers as the one and very few, the only instance of a puppet grappler, and that is purely because of their stupid, infamous infinite grapple attack.
Which I called wobbling because that's what it's known as. It is called the wobble, which is kind of a silly name until you get hit by the wobble and immediately regret all of your decisions that you've ever made in your life.
Exactly.
Because at that point, once you get hit, it's just like, what am I doing? How did I end up here? So, okay, I finally kind of have everything fleshed out. Just for the sake of specifications here, I'm going to save this real fast if I can. There we go. So we have Honey's roster, which is Nightwing, Batgirl, Talia, Robin, Clayface, Catwoman, Bane, Mr. Freeze, Killer Croc. I'm curious as to why some of these are gray.
I made the specific rule that I was going to, because I was having 18 characters, I wanted 9 heroes and 9 villains. So the characters in gray are all heroic, and the characters in black or dark gray are all villains.
Okay, so light and dark, that makes sense. All right, I was very curious about that. I also love that you don't have a single grappler that's a hero. Same. Rushdown. So we have Talia, Robin, Clayface, Catwoman, Bane, Mr. Freeze, Killer Croc, Harley, Azrael, Shiva, Batman, and Ivy, Damian, which is an interesting move because he's not technically in the Arkhamverse, but he was going to be at one point. Scarecrow, Electrocutioner, and the Joker. Now, my roster is quite a bit larger, unfortunately, so I'll try and rattle this off pretty fast. We have...
You want to post your roster just to make it easier for audiences to follow?
Certainly. Just keep in mind, I did format this in Notepad. Don't hate me for that.
You should switch to Excel spreadsheets like I do.
Probably. I probably really should. But Excel scares me, so... Which is ironic because my mom works in Excel sheets all the damn time. So, you're going to be seeing a lot of familiar faces here, but a lot of them come from Arkham Origins because that has a really solid roster. Like, if you want a really small but really solid roster of fighters for an Arkham-style fighting game, just pick the Assassin from Arkham Origins and you're pretty well set. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There we go. So, my roster reads as follows. Batman, Nightwing, Robin, Ra's al Ghul, Talia al Ghul / Nyssa. Any character with a slash, by the way, they're considered clone characters. So Talia and Nyssa share a slot. Think Zelda and Sheik in earlier Smash games. Kinda, sorta. Clayface, Joker, Harley Quinn, Catwoman, Azrael, Arkham Knight / Red Hood, Penguin, Two-Face, Poison Ivy, Mr. Freeze, Scarecrow, Mad Hatter, Killer Croc, Deadshot, Lady Shiva, Deathstroke, Electrocutioner, Copperhead, Firefly, and Bane. Like I said, the roster's quite large and leans quite a bit heavier towards the villains, but that kind of makes sense for the Arkham City story as well, so take it as you will.
Yeah. Before I'm actually gonna. I forgot. I didn't really mention this in my story thing. Because I'm sure people are wondering why are Talia and Damien in my roster. My thinking was that since a big part of the like a subplot during the Arkham City thing was Ra's al Ghul trying to recruit Batman and Talia being around, they'd technically still be in the city when this fighting tournament happens, and so I figured, well, Talia would probably want to help Bruce out, but also that this would be the perfect time for her to introduce Bruce to her to their son, which would basically be the reveal of the Arkhamverse Damian Wayne, and I'll discuss more about how he would play when we get around to the weird characters.
Indeed, which we kind of got to Puppet, and then we discussed rosters because it was an important bit. I know this roster seems quite large, and again leans heavily to the villains, but part of it is because there's a lot more villains in Arkham that are that show up in any large capacity than heroes. You might notice that Batgirl is absent. That's just because even though we are doing a lot of time jumping around in the roster, I personally felt kind of icky having Batgirl in there. Honey has Batgirl, that's fine. I'm not gonna be up in arms about it, but as much as I would love to have Oracle in here, I don't know how well she would work particularly. So I felt it best to just leave Babs out and have her as an announcer / tutorial guide type person.
Yeah, fair enough.
And my roster is, I'm just going to do a quick count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. So it's a 25 character roster. It's a little bigger than I was aiming for, but what can I say? I'm another realm head at heart. This just speaks to me.
And I'm sure between my conservative roster size and your liberal roster size, we'll create a good middle ground eventually.
12, yeah. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Cool. I got everybody in my niches as well. So let's quickly round out the weird, the conventions for the other weird rosters, and then we'll start talking who goes where. Okay.
Composite characters are your, forget his name. He's the guy with the weird yin-yang symbol on his stomach.
Seth!
Seth, yeah.
And by the way, canonically their pronouns are they, them now, because right. Seth now has a female body. And
gotcha.
So you can refer to them as, technically, canonically, you should refer to them as they, them.
Fair enough. Seth is in my opinion, the easiest to identify in terms of a composite character, but there are other characters as well where the basic rule of a composite character is that they can do what everyone else in the game can do. So,
or what large parts of the roster can do. Like, the combat kits are a really good example of composite characters.
Mm-hmm. They basically, it'll depend on the extremes. Some will only have, like, 5 or so moves that are pulled from different characters. Some will literally have every single one of their moves pulled from a different character, but it'll usually be some level of complexity where they get a lot more versatility. They're a very toolboxy style character because they have a lot more options available than other characters do. But yeah. Their downside is they're very complex to play as because they have so many options to do.
Yeah, you're going to be spending lots of time in the lab with a composite character. And it is something I will keep in mind in regards to the weird, is that I like to see these guys as the major tag to the other 4. So you have puppet shotos, puppet zoners, composite grapplers, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
So
its characters There's quite a few different examples of stance characters in fighting games, but they are a character who has a set number of moves, but then when they activate a certain move in their roster, they switch up their entire move list. Usually it'll be their special moves that get switched up, and their neutrals will stay the same either way. But yeah, I also, if you ever were the person who played the 3D, I think it was Mortal Kombat 7 was the 3D one.
Mortal Kombat 7. That was 567 was Armageddon.
Yes, Armageddon. Every character in that game was a stance fighter because everyone could draw their weapon, and then their weapon would instantly switch up their moves.
That's actually true of all of the 3D era games, but Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance and Deception, which was 5 and 6, they gave people 2 unarmed stances and their weapon.
Right.
On top of that. And other examples of stance characters are like Siegfried from Soul Calibur, where he has different positions. He takes his giant Zweihander, and then he can swing from different positions. Or
Tekken is the infamous one, where they have a character who has, I think, 12 stances.
I think it's Wu Long. I can never remember his first name. The drunken fighter archetype. Because he's got like lying down backwards, lying down forwards, lying on your back forwards, crane, monkey, tiger.
It's ridiculous the amount of it's so stupid. I love it.
Well, it's Tekken. This is the same game that gave one character over 200 moves. God damn it, King, I love you, but you have entirely too much to figure out.
Yeah.
God damn it, King.
Taunt characters, they aren't a big character thing, but they are famous for their most infamous poster child of the taunt archetype, Dan Hibiki.
Who is a parody of, I believe it's Ryo from King of Fighters, because Capcom and SNK were being catty in the mid-90s, so Capcom literally made a shitty Ryo just to make fun of King of Fighters.
Yeah, but the basic rule of a taunt character is they have certain moves that don't do any damage at all, and those are usually their taunts. And if you perform the taunt, it usually gives them some sort of bonus afterwards to reward you for doing a move that does not do anything.
Indeed. And while taunts in general, like, taunts are a thing in all fighting games, and generally characters have 1 or 2 taunts, right? And they may not even do anything. In Street Fighter 3, taunts absolutely do things. Like, Chun-Li can get a damage boost. Ken can also get a damage boost. Q gets a defense boost.
In Smash Bros, Luigi is the one character who has a taunt that actually hurts people.
Yeah, that's another really good example of that. Pardon. But Dan, in Street Fighter 4, where most characters have 1 taunt, he has 5. He has a normal taunt, he has a crouching taunt, he has a jumping taunt, and, he has 4. And the 4th one, his legendary taunt, is a second super move where you can burn all of the meter, literally all of it, to do a 6-second taunt that can be special cancelled. That is the benefit of doing the legendary taunt and wasting all of your meter. You just really mess with the opponents because it's like, is he really just going to do the whole thing? Is he really just going to do the whole thing? And he has no invulnerability in this, by the way. You can hit him out of it. But if he anticipates it, he goes for an ultra combo and makes you eat your words. But it's like, dude! And in Street Fighter V, he can use taunts to cancel into other normals so that he can have an absurd combo game for Street Fighter V. So
the value of a taunt character is basically you're playing in hardcore mode because you're intentionally handicapping yourself with all of these useless taunts that don't do anything, and you're saying, yeah, I can beat you with a taunt character.
Bring it. And then your random characters, that's just, they're their own thing.
Random characters, Okay, there are technically two types of random characters, but I didn't want to create another character slot. There are characters who have literal RNG thrown into their mechanics. So like Stein from Guilty Gear and stuff, where they have just an attack Faust from Guilty Gear, where they have an attack that literally requires an RNG thing to roll to determine what actually is going to happen at the end when you do it. There's also the other spectrum of what I call a random character, where they literally do just random bullshit, like Big Band.
God, I love Big Band.
But yeah, characters who, they don't have a playstyle, they don't have a gameplay or a mechanic, their entire thing is just, my character is really just an amorphous blob, and they're just gonna cause whatever I want to happen.
It's literally, we throw shit at the wall and see what sticks. So,
Yeah.
which leads me to wonder, what kind of random character is Joker in this instance?
We'll discuss that when we get to the weird section.
Okay, because I'm very interested to see, like, because I anticipated him to just be the nutball character, but we'll see. So, who are you picking as your Shoto characters? We have 3 each, but funny enough, none of our characters match. So, honey, why don't you start us off?
Okay, so yeah, I made my dedicated true Shoto character, the character who has a invincible reversal, fireball ignore, and fireball attack, being Nightwing, who I felt was pretty good at representing just the balanced playstyle. I didn't want Batman to be that because I felt like the core of a game should be represented by the face of the game, and the core of this game would not be a balanced Shoto thing. This is not Street Fighter, where you're trying to play the footsie type game. This is a much more aggressive combo-oriented game with a lot of mobility, so I felt the face of the game should be a rushdown character, not an all-rounder. So I put Nightwing in that roster instead to be the titular all-rounder Shoto character. Then I'll save Batgirl for last and go to my Talia, who I felt would be the good reversal character. A reversal character in the all-rounder things, we didn't actually get to explain that, is basically your Geese Howards, where they're a defensive-oriented Shoto who's designed to just counter the opponent's stuff, where they have a fireball that can like plus on the opponent's fireball. Their attacks usually don't do a lot of good offensive pressure, but they're really good at countering the opponent's pressure. And that's where I would put Talia in, where she's got really good counterattacks that sort of out-predict the opponent's moves. And then Batgirl. I have Shiva as in my rushdown area, and so I felt I agreed with you, I didn't want to put Oracle in there, and I felt that this would also be the perfect place for including Damien.
Oh, I got completely bamboozled! I genuinely thought you put Babs Girl in there. Oops.
No, I got Cass.
God damn it! I got completely bamboozled and thought it was Babs Girl when I saw Batgirl. Like, okay, that's fair, but it's actually Cassandra Cain, which is way better.
Yes, the footsie character is. We also didn't explain that one. The footsie character is the character who does not have fireballs or project. They are actually kind of defined by having the least amount of real options. They don't have a good command grab. They don't have really any fireball action. But what they excel at is the neutral game. They are very good at the pokes, the pressure, the playing the game as fair as humanly possible. And I felt that if you wanted a character to represent fighting at its most fundamental and pure, that should be Cassandra Cain.
Indeed. Or Shiva, but you threw Shiva in as a Rekka character, so Cassandra Cain is a good shout as well.
Mm-hmm.
Which is perfectly valid. Now, for my all-around characters, keep in mind, Honey put their characters into specific niches, and I didn't necessarily do that. Like, I'm using the chart as a guide, but I'm allowing my characters to be weird, which is why I have Batman as a Shoto. Now, the reason why Batman isn't a Shoto on Honey's list is perfectly valid. But if I had to say what Batman in my mind is closest to, I would say he's actually my reversal. In that he's patient, he's calm. He wants you to come to him so he can fuck you up with your own shit. I mean, especially in Arkham Origins, he steals, he straight up steals a quarter of the assassin's weapons. He steals Deathstroke's remote claw, and he steals Electrocutioner's shock gloves. And he is given Mr. Freeze's freeze blast. So he's got a lot of options, and they all kind of flow into the Shoto reversal style. But his whole thing is that he's a much more counter-heavy character. So he would be closest to Shoto reversal, but, he's nuts. Then we have the opposite of Batman, which is Azrael. I have Azrael kind of being the more rush-down Shoto. He's Ken, in effect, where because Azrael in the game as a character, he's supposed to be Batman, but as is hinted at when he does his Predator challenges, he's much more in people's faces. He's got stars for loud takedowns. He's got stars for not doing any silent takedowns at all. That kind of thing. So Azrael strikes me as Batman, but noisy. So he's Ken. And then Robin is my footsie Shoto, because he has his staff, which gives him his range, and part of having footsies is being able to outpoke people. And he has some funky trap elements as well, like his snap flash and things to get in close, like the zip kick and whatnot. So while his gadget pool has always been kind of small, he has really good reach. Plus his bullet shield is just fantastic, and I love it. So, zoners.
Do any of my zoners match up with yours? You already mentioned Robin, so I'm assuming not there.
No, let me see. Nope, they don't match again.
Everything you said about Robin is basically another reason for why I put him down as my zoner, is just the same reasoning. I just put him down here instead, where he's got really good reach with his staff. He's got good defensive options. He's got a good shield that could just. He's got a really good block system. I'm assuming he would be one of those characters who have there are some types of characters who have special block attacks that basically give them perfect invincibility, but they usually cost an amount of meter to be able to use those things. But they can usually end up doing a really good reversal if you can do your invincible blocks and stuff.
That's where his bullet shield comes in for me. Like, the way I see his bullet shield for Robin is that it is an armored reversal type attack, but in the games, the bullet shield has to regenerate. So I think what would be cool is that if the bullet shield itself had health points.
That could definitely be a thing. I would just make it be tied to a meter, where using the bullet shield would just drain meter while it's up. So you would just basically have to manage your resources good, where you have to okay, how long can I keep the bullet shield up for?
Yeah,
and that's how.
And you're spending spending the same meter you use for your silent takedowns and your quote unquote super attacks. Which reminds me, we'll probably end up talking about general moves later, but there's quite a few interesting ideas that I have for those for certain characters. But moving right along, your next zoner is Clayface.
Yes, I felt that play-wise, Clayface is a very fun character, and I really liked him in Arkham City, the way he played. And I felt like, okay, how do I want to imagine a Fireball? Because I imagine everyone in this, most of the good guys, like Nightwing, Batgirl, Robin, they'll all have at least some amount of zoning ability, where they can just throw a batarang at the opponent for some amount of damage. So everyone will have at least a little bit of zoning, but Clayface, I imagine, would be the one who would have the splashiest type of range attack, where he's just, I'm imagining his default zone is where he just makes a big-ass boulder of clay and rolls at the opponent like a bowling ball.
That's one of the things that he does in the Arkham City boss fight.
Yeah, exactly. I imagine him just being that sort of big band style shapeshifter with a lot of zoning and throwing projectiles, playing sort of also like a Cuphead villain, where he'll just sort of shift into something that'll just start firing random projectiles at the opponent, shooting clay balls in the air, or he'll suddenly flatten down and sort of swoop under the person and like do a bunch of spikes coming underneath them, like that sort of big amorphous blob style zoner type character.
Yeah, his style of zoning is fireball, and also I totally forgot this guy. I am adding Solomon Grundy to my roster, but he does not. He's not relevant just yet. So I just remembered that Grundy was supposed to be in here too. So.
Catwoman is my trap character, and this would basically be my attempt to do justice by Catwoman, because she's just not fun to play as, really, in the Arkham City games.
She's fun if you don't have to use the fucking caltrops in a Predator challenge.
Yeah, but in this case, you would be encouraged to use the caltrops, because it would basically allow you to cut off your opponent's strafing options. So you no longer would be able to. So if half the game is about trying to strafe into bits of darkness, so you can do your shadow attacks. Her being able to just throw caltrops all over a thing, and the dangerous part is the caltrops won't turn visible when they're in the shadow at all. And so if you're just mindlessly strafing, not keeping a mental map of where she put her caltrops out, you're just going to suddenly hit it, and you'll be knocked straight down and be exposed for her to do a rush down combo onto you after you fall down.
So you're okay. I was wondering about this because like the other character with caltrops I was thinking about was Aaron Black from Mortal Kombat X, because in MK11 they decided to make him just a cowboy stereotype, but his caltrops prevented you from dashing, and they did damage over time. What I think could be kind of cool is that if you strafe into the caltrops or strafe while you're in the caltrops, you hurt yourself and you stun yourself to leave you open to an attack. And on the idea of the caltrops being hidden in the darkness, I think what would be kind of cool is that maybe very occasionally they will shine. Kind of like how they shine in Arkham, in the Arkham games, like just so that you can see where they are, but you don't necessarily have to worry about but that's not necessarily something that could even be a thing. Maybe it's even a thing just in the light where they just shine.
Right. I imagine in the light they'll shine, and then in the darkness they'll just completely vanish. And so if you're not paying attention, you might not even you'll just accidentally strafe into them and suddenly just take a bit of damage and suddenly get stunned, and now you're suddenly in a multi-combo log from Catwoman.
Which is bad, because Catwoman is ouch, ouch, ouch.
Exactly. I imagine Catwoman's basic attacks wouldn't really be that good at comboing, because they would they would have a lot of like sort of openings in every one of the attacks, making it very easy to sort of break out of her attacks without even needing to spend meter. Which is why she relies on stunning the opponent with the caltrops, where after she stuns them, then now she's able to go into her full combo without having to worry about them breaking out.
Indeed. And all right, so here's where it gets fun. My zoners, you have 3, I have 6.
Damn.
So, Arkham Knight / Red Hood, they're the clone characters. So, I'll just go by the main one, which is Red Hood in this case. Red Hood is my zoner. Penguin, Mr. Freeze, Deathstroke, Deadshot, and Talia and Nissa. So, Deathstroke and Talia are both Lancer-type zoners, but Deathstroke I think is the epitome of all 3. Like, he is the hard zoner, but that's because instead of specializing super hard in one or the other, he has all 3. He has smoke bombs, he has proximity mines, he has snap flash, he has his staff, he has projectiles out of said staff. So, I think while Deadshot would be also a hard zoner, but he would be a fireball type hard zoner where all of his things are all projectiles, and if you get in close, Deadshot signs his death warrant, basically. Deathstroke is not as hard into all of them, but he has zoning options for literally everything, is his sort of thing. Like, and he could do better up close than Deadshot, but not by much. Penguin is a weird one just because Penguin's so damn short. But I think it'd be cool if he was more heavily into zoning and tricks with his projectiles. Like, he's got a trick umbrella. Let's let him go nuts. Like, standard projectile, slick projectile, light up projectiles to get rid of shadows, that kind of thing. Red Hood is a fireball zoner because of his guns and his flash grenade and his flashbangs, which would be really good at lighting up as well to deny darkness. So that's one thing Red Hood and Penguin have in common, is that they have options to get rid of darkness, which is part of the zoning archetype. Because to be a zoner, you want the character, your enemy, in a position where you are most comfortable to hit them and they can't hit you back. So part of that is by taking away their options, and I think one of the best ways to do that is to have Penguin and Red Hood be light up zoners, in essence.
Okay.
And
I can definitely see that as having the ability to light up the arena would be a good thing for Robin, Clay, for all three of mine as well, being able to do that of some kind.
Absolutely. And Talia's a Lancer through and through because she uses her sword for extra reach. So she's she's combo heavy, but she's still a Lancer. So she's a zoner in the same way that Robin from Injustice 2 is, with the sword providing big reach for her.
She's a Sagat-style zoner.
Yes. And then we have Mr. Freeze, who is Lex Luthor on steroids. Like, you take Lex Luthor from Injustice 1, Sub-Zero from the Mortal Kombat games, and add a little bit of grappling in there, and you've got Mr. Freeze. So he's got those things that, those things that track heat signatures in his boss fight?
Yeah. He
can use those to basically remove the darkness element after a few seconds and light the opponent up while they're sneaking around. He can also set up ice traps so that you slip, and his ice gun can freeze people. And he would also have a command grab option at extremely close range. So where Mr. Freeze actually has the most amount of trouble is in the range between his command grab and his projectiles. So kind of in that up close zone. So in a funny way, while Mr. Freeze is a zoner, he sucks at lancing. So Talia, for instance, would be really good at that matchup against Mr. Freeze because her sword hits right in that sweet zone where Mr. Freeze's best option is to shunt you back with his giant freeze gun and hope that it actually hits and isn't blocked. So that's my take on the zoner characters. So I have 3 grapplers, and you have 3 grapplers, and for once, we share 2 of them. I've got Killer Croc and Bane in here.
Nice. Who is your third one?
Solomon Grundy.
Okay.
And Killer Croc is actually going to be my beater command grab hybrid. Like, you have him as Big Boy, which is perfectly valid, but my Big Boy is Grundy. Full stop.
Fair enough. That is a good choice as well.
But especially because Grundy, I think, is the biggest character in the Arkhamverse. So, like, he's huge. He's huge. So he would be the big boy. And we have the agreement that Bane is our command grab character.
Yeah, like, if you have an archetype defined around grappling and putting the opponent in holds, you use the Mexican luchador. Or Brazilian luchador, but still.
Well, yeah. Well, Caribbean, because Santa Prisca is in the Caribbean Isles. The point is, dude's a luchador. That is his whole fucking thing.
Exactly.
So, yes, Bane is our command grab character. No 2 ways about it. I think what would be cool is that Grundy kind of also falls into the weirdo thing for the same thing as one of the other characters we'll talk about, where he can heal himself. And I want to implement the weird undead parasite monster thing somehow.
One thing, actually, I want to try to incorporate with Bane is a little bit of stancing, where if he does his super combos, whenever he does the super combo that uses like full meter to hit the opponent, The drawback is it immediately drains all the venom out of his system, and so he turns into a scrawny normal guy for a few minutes. And he has to like try to run away from the opponent for the bit before he can like build up his muscle again.
Especially since in the Arkhamverse, except for Arkham Origins, Bane really leans into that. Like he's a giant meatball, and then he's a scrawny a pancake.
Which I think would be a very fun, like, cost-reward system where you get a really powerful super attack that just does a shit ton of damage, but you're extremely vulnerable afterwards, where you're just going to be taking, like, double damage because you're just a tiny twig at this point.
Yeah.
But since you went over into how your Mr. Freeze plays as a zoner, my Mr. Freeze, as you can see, is a grappler, and they're playing on very similar again, how you described your Mr. Freeze is very similar to how I would play Mr. Freeze on my end, where he's got this he has a few options for ranged abilities and very good options for close range, but lacks that sort of mid-range ability, where in my situation, his ranged options don't do a lot of damage at all. But the big weakness that grappler-style characters have is a lack of they lack the ability to enter into the opponent. They don't really have a lot of good approaching options, and that is the purpose of Freeze's Ice. It is to restrain the opponent, limit their mobility options and movements, immobilize them so that you can walk up close and then start pummeling them afterwards. And I definitely see that as being like the way he would play, where he would like sort of do a freeze attack that would launch the ice onto an area, and it would freeze that whole area up, and so you would be limited. It's sort of like a trap style grappler, a grappler who has a bunch of little trap options at his disposal to limit the opponent's escape options, so you can just lumber closer and closer to you until he can just get you in his hand and start pummeling you.
Yeah, like his whole thing is that he uses the freeze to get in close, whereas my version of Bane is using the freeze to just lock you down.
Exactly.
So, similar ideas executed differently. I like that. Now we get to the rushdown characters. And we actually share a couple, and one of your earlier characters is in rushdown for me. Catwoman is a rushdown character in my list. Harley Quinn and Shiva are both rushdown characters, and we have the same basic idea for Harley, I imagine, which is she's there to be crazy but controlled crazy, to mix you up.
Yeah, her whole thing is she's super unpredictable, and the fighting archetype defined around unpredictability is the mix-up with their 50-50s. Like, you can't predict what they're going to do.
Okay, and yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking with Harley. Shiva, I didn't really have as a Rekka character, but I had her as, like, Combo Queen Supreme, using things like stance cancels, and she could parry into her crazy combos. Like, she's the character that, in Mortal Kombat X, the character that, in my personal experience, that has the most amount of hits per combo is Kung Lao. Because if you really wanted to, you could spend all 3 bars and use a throw ender to get a 51-hit combo with Kung Lao.
Yeah, that's definitely how I see Shiva as well.
Yeah, and the thing is too is that I see Shiva being very, like, she's not beginner friendly at all, but once you kind of get a feel for her and get her counter combos going, like, she can counter like everybody else, sure, but her counter reversals start combos. She is the queen of beating your ass. But I want to implement a little bit of comics Shiva on the behalf of Judge Anon, and give her a really interesting super move gimmick. If she finishes you with her big super instant combo takedown, she revives you.
I like that idea. And I was seeing where you were going with that. Yeah, I do like the idea of her having a punch that just recovers the opponent's recovers them to like a quarter of their HP that they have left, but then like what it does also is like it'll give her some meter as well afterwards after she does the super, so she won't end up at 0, but you'll also still end up with some HP at the end.
Nah, I think for maximum style points you lose all of your meter. So
I don't know. I mean, what is the actual reward in this instance to doing the healing super then?
First, character loyalty to the character to do her justice for the random League of Assassins bullshit, and second, it's style points. So it's all style points. So let's say it's a tournament, big professional fighters are going in, and Shiva wins against the opponent at grand finals, flawless victory. But in a way it's called popping off, to basically taunt your opponent in real life, being like, you're absolute garbage. Revive them with full health and say, let's do this again. You know what I mean?
Fair enough. I can definitely see that.
But and of course, if you if you just finish them with a normal punch, you don't revive them. It only occurs when you do the resurrection thing, so you actively choose to revive them.
One thing I was thinking of could work is there's I forget if this is from Blaze Blue or Guilty Gear, but there's a character who's like a literal angel who heals people, and like their finisher super sequence is them healing the opponent to full health, and then their puppet character not understanding what they're doing and murdering them.
That's Blaze Blue, and I know exactly who you're talking about, but her name escapes me.
Yeah. But I'm imagining something like that for a Shiva, where she'll do full combo, knock your ass down, take out all your HP, then do the resurrection punch, pull you back up, and then immediately put you down for a second combo during the animation sequence.
That would be fucking hilarious. Certainly something to think about. But my other 2 rushdown characters, so real quick, Harley is mix-up and Shiva's crazy combos. Catwoman, she's kind of a blend of Lancer, Trap, and combo as well. Because Catwoman, at least in Arkham City, is stupid fast. She has the fastest beatdown in the game, bar none. She has great range. So her whole thing is that she is fast, but she has fantastic ranged options too. Like the Caltrops, like the whip attacks, for instance, which she's going to be using a lot of. But a lot of her flashier attacks are slow, like her aerial attack, which I can't tell you how many times I have failed aerial attacks and have had to reset challenges where I'm going for flawless combat because I go for the aerial attack and some asshole with the stun baton jams it in the kitty booty. It's rude! It's rude! And then my other 2 rushdown characters are Nightwing, which I forgot to mention was the other difference, and that's because Nightwing in combat is very close up with his sticks. And yes, he has a projectile, and I want to give him the wrist darts, because I loved the wrist darts in Arkham City, and they took them away in Arkham Knight, and I hate it so much. But, yeah, so he would have the wrist darts as well. And then here's a real fun one. It's a rushdown mix-up command grab hybrid. Copperhead.
Okay.
Copperhead. That's who it would be. So, because she has the crazy contortionist movements and whatnot, that would also make her very hard to hit. So she could also fit into the stancing where she takes different poses and stances, and then she could do other weird things like give you hallucinations of when she has enough meter. One of her super things is she creates a shadow clone of herself where she can have guaranteed mix-ups, like Scorpion in MK11 when he does his Misery Blade stance. When you meter burn it, you actually create a shadow clone going up or going low, depending on which mix-up you're going for. So for meter, it wouldn't necessarily do a whole lot of damage, but for meter, she has guaranteed mix-ups.
Fair enough.
So that would be kind of where I'm going with Copperhead. And let's talk about your rushdown characters.
Yeah, so like I said, for my Harley, the pure idea, like you, is just the mix-up is supposed to be the most unpredictable of the aggressive characters, where you don't know, should I block left, should I block right, should I block high, should I block low? You don't know, you're not going to know, you're going to suffer, and you're going to die. And that is how I predict Harley. Definitely giving her the big, oversized comedic hammer to go along with it.
The fact that she doesn't
is-
have the giant comedic hammer in the Arkham series is a fucking crime.
Yes, exactly. I 100% agree. Azrael is, like you said, also in the Arkham games, he is just the most aggressive character in the whole series. He is just raw aggression, and that just him slashing, hacking fast. I just imagine him being the character who is always plus, always being hyper aggressive, but the downside for the fact that he is always plus, always aggressive is that flaming sword of his always lights him up during the shadows.
So
you cannot do stealth attacks while you're playing Azrael because he is always lit up.
Totally, unless he turns it off somehow, and that is costly. Also, I'm just picturing this happening at a tournament when the commentators are watching Azrael do his crazy pressure, and they just go, "The power of Christ compels you, motherfucker!" I don't know. I just thought that was a funny thing to picture Azrael saying as he's just bashing opponents on block, and it's just like, dude, give me a turn!
But yeah, so I mentioned earlier when I was talking about Shadows, I feel like this type of format is going to be a very aggressive, very movement-oriented type of format, where, and like with Guilty Gear, where their face of the game is a rushdown character, that's how I feel it should be for this as well, where the face of the game should be Batman. And we both had a similar playstyle in mind for how we thought, where he is a character who can escape in and out of danger. He's good mobility options, where he sort of controls and plans and plays carefully. Is just, for me, him playing the calm control thing does not escape from the fact that he's still super aggressive and very good at getting out of danger. Because when you play the Arkham games, the usual playstyle is rush in, take out a guy, then immediately get out of danger, get into a safety place, and then go rush in and take down the next guy. Like, that is how you play in Arkham, and that's how I feel Batman should play in the games. Like, he rushes in, does a few combos, gets a command grab, then gets out of there as fast as he can.
Perfectly valid, and that's why you're classing him as an escape character.
Exactly. And we're both just completely on the same page in terms of Shiva.
Yeah.
So now we enter the Weirdo Zone.
You're traveling to another dimension. I really want to get good at a Rod Serling thing, because I love the Twilight Zone. So, you have 5 characters in the Weird Zone.
Mm-hmm.
I have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 9. But we do share a handful of people in here, and we have the same idea for one of them. So we share.
One of them we had the same idea because we came up with the idea together.
Is the Electrocutioner.
Yes, we both loved in Arkham Origins the wrestling heel speech of "I'm gonna lay the smackdown on you," and then just one hit taken out.
Yeah, he's got a pretty sizable health bar and he's got electric gloves. He seems scary. You hit him, he instantly goes down, and I'm laughing. But I think what would be cool, so that he's not completely useless, is that we give his gimmick of the electric gloves, and he's very limited, right? Because he's just a street tough at the end of the day. So every time he taunts, he charges his gloves. And when he has enough charge, he turns his gloves on, and his attacks, while they light him up, which is a double-edged sword, meaning he can't do stealth takedowns, but he can't get stealth taken down.
Right.
He also does unblockable damage, and his attacks do triple the damage.
The way I see the Electrocutioner is he is a weird hybrid mashup of Dan and Balrog, where basically the taunt is the same as his charge punch, where you're just building the charge as much as you can before you can go into the super mode.
Yeah. So you have to restrict one of your buttons in order to charge up your electric shock gloves, and maybe you have to restrict different ones as the charge goes on to speed up the charging process.
Agreed.
Yeah.
One character I particularly really want to talk about, because I thought this was a brilliant idea, that I thought was like a great idea, is Scarecrow is my stance character. And
I like this idea. I'm doing him a bit differently, but I would love to hear what you got.
so, not all stance characters can actually just control when they go into one or the other. Idol from Killer Instinct will randomly swap back and forth between his two heads.
You can try and trigger it in Killer Instinct. I know this because there's an actual command to have Idol punch himself in the face.
Yeah, I love that. But in this version of things, so the base Scarecrow is just, he's got the claws, he's sort of creepy, lanky, tries to go, and he basically has just a set of good neutrals and specials where his job is just to land his really good command grab where he grabs and stabs you with the claws, injecting you with the fear toxin. That's how you enter stage 2, where suddenly you enter the Scarecrow fear state, and he is now a giant, towering... He switches from a rushdown character to a big boy.
Very cool. So he becomes the Scare Beast.
Yeah, he becomes that giant, towering Scarecrow thing with the piercing eyes, where you can just nullify all shadows by just looking around and, like, being able to see everything in front of him. And just having big, sweeping grabs and combo strings. Like, he goes from a sort of a relatively decent rushdown mix-up character where his job is just to try to get in close and get that one grab in, and then once he gets the grab in, he is now the biggest of big boys.
I dig that idea and I approve, but I'm actually going in a slightly different direction here. Scarecrow would very much be a stance character, and injecting the opponent with a fear toxin would trigger the nightmare scenario, but here's where things get different for me. Scarecrow does not have it as a stance. He becomes a full-blown boss character. Like, I don't mean that in the terms of he's a boss character like Shao Kahn in MK9. I mean that in the terms of he is the boss of a bunch of skeletal minions.
Okay.
And you control the skeletal minions, and they are generated at random, and you get 3, and they fall into one of 4 archetypes. You have the punchy ones, you have the stabby ones because they have a sword, you have the burny ones which have a stun baton but it's a torch, and then you have the super stabby ones which have the knives. And the reason why I specify those specifically is because in Arkham Asylum, there was DLC for a Scarecrow Infinite Combat Challenge map, which had the skeletal minions from the Arkham Asylum story mode, but they included knife skeletons and stun baton skeletons, which had a torch.
Okay.
So I'm taking from that particular incident, and Scarecrow's just watching. And of course, the whole arena is lit up, so you can't stealth. So you have to take on 3 of these guys. They will have 25% of the health of a normal character, so they're very easy to take out. But, you know, you don't know what you're going to get yourself into, and neither does the Scarecrow character until you see it, and then it becomes, well, scary. And I also want to take inspiration from Jason Voorhees in Mortal Kombat X, where he has various command grabs. Like, his main gimmick is to try and become the Puppet Master style Scarecrow, but he can also do things like inject you with fear toxin so you become afraid of the dark. And you can see where this would be useful in not being able to go into the dark, or scrambling your inputs, or anything like that. So
I could definitely see also certain fear toxin combos causing certain debuffs. Where where he'll have one specific, like, he'll have basically multiple stances where one stance causes the big giant mode where if he gets that grab on you, but you'll also have a stance where if he stabs you, you suddenly are moving more sluggishly, or you can't do projectiles, or you're suddenly scared of the dark.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And you will see, like, to help you out, you will see the effects, unless, you know, it's giant mode.
Yeah, they'd be like color-coded fear things that are circling around your character's head.
Yeah, so it's like red is you can't go into the darkness. Blue, you can't use projectiles, that sort of thing. I want Scarecrow to be, I call it a control character. He's controlling what you're allowed to do. The next one we share is Poison Ivy. And I love that you have her as a puppet character, because I presume it's the same basic idea. She summons plant monsters or mind-controlled guards to fight for her. But what is she...
Sort of.
But I'll start with my Poison Ivy, where she's summoning the guards and whatnot. But she's not completely helpless on her own. She is a trap/zoner type character. She wants you to stay away from her, so she's summoning vines to trap people, or setting up those weird, giant, magic, evil turnip monsters that spit giant spores at you, or any number of things. And she also has a gas cloud thing that scrambles your inputs as well. But her main thing is that she needs to summon people to do her dirty work for her. And what's your take on Ivy?
So I definitely very similar theming in terms of a trap puppet type character. For her, I had a very interesting playstyle where I basically built her off of the moves I had in my head of how she would play. Where one attack she would do is she would create a sort of Plants vs. Zombies style seed shooter plant that would grow on the opposite side of the opponent from you, start shooting them from the other side, so it would start pressuring them from both directions.
So she's shooting you in the back and hitting you from the front.
Yeah, and then you could you can have two of these out at a time. So you could set one up, strafe, and then make another one on the other side. That thing is, though, these things don't lock onto the opponent. They're only shooting in the direction that they are grown from.
So could Ivy get hit by her own projectiles?
Possibly. I didn't consider that as an option, but that could be, if it's kind of overpowered, you could make that as a downside where she has to worry about being hit by her own things. She'd also have other attacks where she could grow, she would have vines go underneath and shoot towards the opponent, and they would have to strafe to the side or something to get out of the way. Otherwise, they would grab them for a short temporary thing where the vines just start strangling them for a little bit before they're able to break free. And she would have all these different types of attacks where the plants would go for a specific pre-recorded pathway. So the vines would go towards the opponent, the pods would come up on a specific location and start shooting in their direction. And she would basically be creating all of these self-controlled AIs that would do their own things that she wouldn't be able to control after they get launched, but she would be covering the board in all of these different plant lives that would be doing their own different things.
First off, I love the vines traveling towards the opponent. That's ripped right out of Arkham Asylum. I love that. But second, and this is just because I am such a nerd, I used to do competitive Pokemon for a little while. And one of my favorite strategies is stall, because I'm an asshole in Pokemon battles. And one of a stall team's best friends is a Pokemon called Ferrothorn, which is a grass steel evil durian monster with vines. And one of the best moves you can slap on Ferrothorn is Leech Seed.
Yep, I was definitely imagining a Leech Seed style move where she hits the opponent, where when she hits them with the vines, she's able to drain a bit of HP off of them to recover HP as well.
Yeah, but I think it'd be cool if Tanya's Dust in Mortal Kombat X does this thing where, it makes the opponent dusted, and for, I think it's 10 seconds, they will take more than double damage from her fireball attacks. So, in a similar vein, she can just throw in very short range these spores or seeds that attach to the opponent and are constantly draining health that either she can recover passively or creates this pool which is always stored, where she can then go in for a command grab, poison them with a kiss to do more damage over time, while then absorbing the health pool that is stored.
Mm-hmm.
In order.
I would also imagine these seeds that she throws onto the opponent could maybe turn the pods that are normally shooting in a single direction.
They're lock-ons.
And allow for them to target onto the opponent.
They're little beacons.
Yeah, exactly.
And I like the idea too that Poison Ivy, like, her whole thing in the end of the day is, like, while she's a puppet character, sure, one of her other things is that I love the idea of a character who kills you through damage over time. Because, again, Stall from Pokemon. So Poison Ivy could easily fit that, where she poisons you and you take damage over time. She leech seeds you for damage over time. She strangles you for damage over time.
There's just pellets flying around all the place that are slowly doing chip damage on you.
Yes, exactly. And our last one is Joker. And and the way I have it, Joker's a fucking nutcase. Like, when you played as him in Arkham Asylum, he had a very limited gadget pool, but it was perfect. Like, he had a gun that had 1 bullet per round in combat rounds, but it could go through multiple opponents, and had a times 250 multiplier.
Yeah.
So if you saved it for the end of a particularly tough round with 100 combo, and then hit them with the 250, that's a lot of points. He also stuns you with gas, with like a spray can full of Joker toxin, and he has like gas that comes out of his flower, so there's a lot you could do there. So his whole thing is just to befuddle you, but not in the same way as Harley where it's mix-ups. He's befuddling you because he's doing shit that is just messing with you. Like, he has, with his Joker toxin, an unblockable stun that leaves the opponent open to attack, and scrambles their controls. He has the acid from the flower that does damage over time, but does more damage if you're blocking, for instance. Or the Joy Buzzer to knock the opponent down, and X-ray goggles that he could just put on his face as a stance to see where you are in the darkness, that kind of thing. He's just a mess, but in this case a lovable mess, because it's played by Mark Hamill, and how can you say no to that man?
Yeah, my version of Joker is very similar to Faust from Guilty Gear, where he'll definitely have a few RNG style mechanics where he'll have a he'll have a gun and he'll shoot it, and it'll either do a normal shot, or it'll sometimes randomly do the Joker shot where it'll suddenly just, the flag will come out, bang, and then he'll fire it again, and it'll do much more damage than it would normally do. And he'll have other things where he'll throw out exploding teeth that'll start moving in, and they'll bounce around the screen in random directions that you can't really plan around. And he'll do a bunch of, he'll have a lot of RNG based to his mechanics, but he'll also, similar to Foss, have just the weirdest animation sequences where he'll literally, because the thing is, because my version of this is taking place after Arkham City, Joker isn't Joker anymore. Joker is a madness hallucination that is existing in Batman's head. Joker can do literally whatever he wants in this situation. So in this version of things, he's literally a Saturday morning cartoon character at this point.
He's the Mask!
He can flatten himself, go cuckoo, and like he has so many animation sequences that'll be pulled straight from Bugs Bunny and Wile E. Coyote and stuff like that.
I love the hallucination idea because I was really wondering about that, but I'm giggling because I'm just picturing the Mask.
Exactly.
Honorable shout to that, because I know who you're talking about with Faust, and this is more of a question that I feel like I know the answer to, but I want to double check real quick. Does he or does he not do the thing where he slides between people's legs and sticks his fingers up your butt?
Oh, Joker would absolutely do that.
Because, for those who don't know, Faust has a super move that does exactly that.
It's because it's a weirdly super common party joke that people do in Japan.
Yeah, it's just slip in and boink, and it's very weird, but
It's what they do.
It is what it is. And, I mean, we know Joker is very into multiple cultures. I mean, he calls Scorpion a Hawaiian triggerfish in Hawaiian. For those who don't
know. I did not know that.
In one of the intros in Mortal Kombat 11, he goes, he taunts Scorpion. Scorpion tells him to choose his next words carefully. Never tell that to the Joker. And Joker literally says, and I quote, "Humu humu nuku nuku apua'a," which I had to look up because I was completely confused. And it is a kind of triggerfish found off the coast of Hawaii. Or is it humu humu numu numu apu? No, it's humu humu nuku nuku apua'a. It's hard as hell to say, and if anybody knows Hawaiian and is cursing me in the comments, I don't blame you. But your only character that we don't share in the weird section is Damien. So why don't we talk about Damien?
So my Damien, I have him listed as my composite character because not every composite character needs to have a large supply of characters that they take pulls from, but rather they could be similar to a lot of the MK10 children characters.
Cassie Cage is a perfect example of that.
Yeah, they're a composite of two different characters, and I felt, well, Damien is literally the child between Talia and Batman, so he should have the moves between Talia and Batman. So he would be the ultimate control style character. He would have Batman's escape tools as well as Talia's counter plays, and he would just be all about reversing the opponent, getting out of danger, and like he would be a zoner in everything but having none of the fireball stuff. He would just, all of his utility things would just be, you can't hit me and I'm gonna punish you for trying to.
Yeah, and Damien I think should have some taunting elements too.
Yes, absolutely. Damien would 100% have a taunt.
Because Damien is a cheeky little shit, so...
Absolutely.
And
I feel also that sort of fits Damien's, like, as a story, what he is. He's supposed to be the ultimate little assassin character who's, like really dedicated to what he was forced to do as a kid, trained all his life to do all this. So it would make sense that he would be this perfect, can control the opponent's out thing, because he's super disciplined, super focused on all the rules and the principles. So he would just be all about just controlling the fight, because the principles of martial arts is controlling the opponent's actions.
Indeed. And Damien is not on my list, which is why I had you talk about Damien. But I have a bunch of characters that aren't on your list. So why don't we start with Clayface, because Clayface is the easiest one. And I'm stealing from Capcom on this one, full stop. In Street Fighter V, there is now 11 is now a character, but 11 is your random select.
Yes.
So Clayface is your random select. So
fair enough.
So Clayface is technically
you gotta make a more fun version of that, though, because 11 it's not a very fun version of the random select.
Well, because it's what you would do is you'd pick Clayface, and Clayface is your random select, full stop. And Clayface will talk shit before he turns into the character, and then there would be unique intros for a Clay-faced Batman or a Clay-faced Azrael or whatever, but otherwise they fight exactly the same, because it's just random. So, I love random select sometimes, so having Clayface take the role of a random select feels perfect. Plus, he's an actor. We gotta put him in the spotlight somehow.
I actually, if I was to include a random select character, I would make Hush be the random select character.
Wait, and have Hush mimic everybody?
Hush's whole thing is that he's a master of plastic cosmetic surgery and also impersonating other people. He mainly does it with Batman, but he's also done it with a few other characters, like he copied Nightwing as well at one point. And having it just be that when you click Hush and he does the character select screen, he'll remove the bandages off of his face and reveal that he's the character that he's become.
That would be really cool, but also I think it would be hilarious if... it's a hilarious visual, because if he's going to impersonate one of the female characters...
or impersonating Killer Croc.
Or Grundy?
It would just be super hilarious seeing Hush do that.
Indeed. And while Clayface is the more logical one, I will give Hush props just because it's so fucking hilarious. The next one that's really interesting is Firefly. First off, Firefly is going to be an archetype that doesn't really exist per se, but is almost existent, and I'm calling them flight characters.
Okay.
So his whole thing is he controls the sky. He can even block in the air, which is very unusual. On the ground, he's fucking useless. He does have a launcher where he can launch the opponent and then chase them in the air and do a Marvel-style juggle combo and then stay in the air. But his whole thing is he stays in the air, he can combo from the air, and he can also throw projectiles, grenades, jets of flame, that sort of thing. And because his whole thing is flight and being in the air, his jetpack is something he lives and dies by. Because when his jetpack is active, he cannot be stealthed. And you cannot stealth him from the air either. So when he's about to launch into the air, either through his launcher or through the special move where he activates the jetpack, he cannot be stealthed at all. And with the flames lighting everything up, stealth is going to be very hard. But his jetpack will only have a limited amount of fuel, like Black Manta, which will regenerate in Injustice 2, which will regenerate over time, but will force him to be on the ground, which is where Firefly does not want to be.
There's actually a handful of characters in Clash of Ninja who fit this exact playstyle, actually.
Yeah, and Sindel from MK9 and the classic arcade MK games kind of fits this as well. So there's that's why I said it's not quite a niche per se, but it's almost there. It's the flight type characters, and Firefly would fit that perfectly. My stance character is Two-Face.
I was considering that too before I had my idea for Scarecrow, and I would absolutely, if I was including more than just 18, I would have gone for stance character Two-Face as well.
Well, because it's perfect, right? Like if he flips a coin, and it's not going to be RNG because that would be ridiculous for Two-Face. So he'll just flip a coin, it lands clean side up, and that's Harvey talking. Harvey is cleaner, refined. He's not the great, he's better up close, even though he's not the greatest at it, and he is pretty good with interactables and stuff like that. But he flips to face, and he becomes pretty much feral, and lots of guns and stuff like that. So Two-Face is two characters for the price of one at the flip of a coin. Then we have Raish. Now, you're probably thinking, what the hell is Raish doing in the weirdo category? He should fit in more with whatever category Talia is in, whether it's all around or zoner. Well, Raish is a zombie. Through and through, he's a zombie. And I think one of his main gimmicks should be that while he kind of fits into the same sort of thing as, Talia but meaner, I think one of his main gimmicks should be that he's a healer character, where he heals himself with Lazarus juice.
That could definitely be an interesting thing. One other idea you could do is really pull and make him a teleporting character. Yeah. Because the ninjas in the Arkham games are all about their teleporting and...
Oh yeah, Raish is absolutely teleporting around. And I think what would be kind of cool is that he has this really faint glow with him, that it fades over time, but it never really goes away, so at uber close range, if Batman's basically French kissing his neck, you can see Batman. But if Raish heals, or activates his heals, he glows. So he can be stealthed. And, uniquely, he can counter stealth for free if he's glowing.
Okay.
So, and it would just be a normal counterattack, and the caveat is that the opponent could go back into the stealth right away, but it's still a counterattack. So it's something that he can do. So he's kind of controlling your options as well, but his main thing is that maybe he doesn't have as much health as everybody else, but that's because he could get it all back.
Yeah, regenerating characters typically have a much smaller base health pool because they can just get it all back eventually.
Unless your name is Elena. And my last? My last one is the Mad Hatter. And the Mad Hatter is kind of like Scarecrow, but first off, he's small, and he has the smallest health pool in the game. But not only can he call in goons, he can also plant tags on the opponent to restrict their options directly. So whereas Scarecrow, you might have 3 or 4 options based off of your Fear Toxic command grabs at the end, Mad Hatter, his tags are projectiles or things that he just slaps on, and they number in the 8 or 9 for what he can restrict. He can restrict you from going in the dark. He can restrict you from jumping. He can restrict you for a short period of time from moving. And that's one of his super options, is he puts a tag on you, and you just stand there and let him beat the crap out of you.
Okay.
So his whole thing is, because he's kind of an Alice in Wonderland character as well, maybe one of his tags removes all interactables from the opponent's line of sight. So you can't. So if you're near the bat thing and he hits you with a specific tag, you can't use You can't see the interactables, much less use them. But Mad Hatter can.
Okay.
So that's kind of the idea I'm going with, is because Mad Hatter's all about hypnosis and control and messing with people. So I really wanted Mad Hatter to be involved, even though I'm very iffy on the character in and of itself. But I think because of how bombastic, crazy Mad Hatter is in the Arkham games, it would feel very silly not to have him in an Arkham Fighting Game in some small capacity.
That's fair. I'm not the biggest Mad Hatter fan myself, but and I do kind of like the idea, though it does kind of feel like a little too close to how Scarecrow plays as well.
Yeah, and that's the tricky thing. Like, how do you make Mad Hatter different from Scarecrow? Because, I mean, Mad Hatter has his minions that he calls at any time instead of it being a super move, and he has more ways to control people, but it's like, it's very similar, but at the same time, look at Ryu and Ken.
Fair.
So...
And when you have that many characters in your thing, you're going to have some characters who are kind of double-dipped.
Yeah, and you have other similar characters like Batman and Azrael, and I even have a couple of clone characters, Natalia and Nissa. So I think, unless we got anything else, that just about does it, except we are going to take a look at Mono's thing. So I'm just going to go grab it real fast. So, because now that we're in the archetypes, and we're finishing up, now is the perfect time to talk about Monos. Okay, I'm going to have to do this in 2 parts now. Because apparently they put a 1,200 characters too much somehow. Okay. Control X. 210. And there we go. So Mono has a lot. This is all a direct quote from Mono. So shout out to Mono for this. Just because, you know, they went through the trouble and unfortunately they could not make it. So I'm gonna give them big props for this one. Poison Ivy. Since she's not too much of a physical fighter in most media, I wanted to make a version of her that plays into that. She would be a puppet character, a character where players controlled more than one character at once. Think Rosalina and Luma in Smash. That's another good example. She would summon different plants that she could control in a match and do different things with, depending on where the plant is. She would barely physically touch the opponent. I also think she should have some sort of move similar to Injustice 2 Kiss move, which she deals damage over time. So a lot of ideas that we've already talked about, but they're great for Ivy. So, good one, Mono. Bane, just like in Injustice, I think Bane should be a slow and tanky character who has trouble getting in but can deal massive damage with his throws. Command grab character. Croc, similar to Bane, he would also be a grappler. Unlike Bane, he would have more mobility and be able to utilize his grabs and throws in combos, but to balance, he'd do less damage. I think a good example of what I'm getting at is Baraka from MK11. Oh, yeah, that's actually a really good point, because Baraka has the lunge and the low stab and gutted and all of these things that are kind of grab-like and feral, and he bites people. So I like this. I like this example, Mono. Mono says of Harley, should be a lighthearted and fun character with a lot of different tricks up her sleeve. Think she would have different gadgets and stuff that could work in different situations, making her a jack of all trades. Bud and Luke could play a bigger part of her moveset than she has in Injustice 2. That would be great. I mean, we are ignoring a bunch of character deaths too, so we could probably ignore Bud and Lou's, but it's worth keeping in mind that Bud and Lou were shot and stuffed by the Penguin in the Arkhamverse. You can find them in Arkham City, darkly. Mr. Freeze. Similar to him / Captain Cold in Injustice 2, makes sense. Defensive, keep away focus, keep his enemies as far away as possible while he fixes his gun. The longer the match he would go on, the better Freeze becomes as he's open to better specials and move the more charged and powerful his gun becomes. Best strategy to fight him is to keep him from charging his gun as much as possible. I like that because of the charging gun gimmick. That's
One actually idea I think would be kind of cool for Mr. Freeze is the big central gimmick for the Mr. Freeze fight in Arkham City was that he adapted to every move that you did.
Yeah.
After you did to him. It could be really interesting if he had his version of the taunt was him adapting his suit to be able to take it. So he would now be resistant to the last super that you just used, the last special or super that you used against him.
That could be cool. I like that. And it plays into this idea where he's got to back up and prepare it, but once he prepares it, good luck.
Yeah.
Clayface, a stance character through and through. Oh, I like this. I think he could have different stances that involve turning his limbs into different sorts of weapons. I think a move he could have is turning into either his opponent or another character in the game for a short amount of time, maybe 15 to 20 seconds. I'm surprised Clayface hasn't been considered before in fighting games, and frankly, so am I.
Agreed.
I mean, I know Clayface is a bit of a mess, pun not intended, but shape-shifting characters have been a thing. Like,
yeah.
just ask Street Fighter. They have 11, and 12, and Necro, and Dulcin. Catwoman, a hybrid zoner grappler where she uses her whip to either strike at a distance or pull her opponents in closer some combos. Neat.
Similar to what we had.
Batman. I can't think of a perfect way to describe him, but he'd be the premier beginner-friendly Shoto, all-arounder type that anyone can understand and play decently well. He could use similar abilities and moves to his Injustice counterpart. That makes sense. Zip kick, batarang throw. That's all in the Arkhamverse as well. Nightwing, combo heavy rushdown who utilizes his staff. Interesting that they specified the staff when Nightwing generally uses the sticks, but I know where they're coming from, because in Injustice 1 he can click the sticks together to make a staff, which is, I think, super fucking cool, and I don't think has been adapted in the comics before, so you know what? Let's do that. Red Hood, a parry character with a lot of mobility and flashy gun combo moves. I'd bring his taser stance from Injustice 2 back since I thought that was sort of fun. Yes, for those who don't know, Red Hood in Injustice 2, his trait, he electrifies the butts of his guns and goes into a combo that has one of 4 enders. A side switch, an overhead, a low, and an amplified option that is just super flashy and does big boy damage. Their idea for Damien is a hit-and-run character who runs in to strike with a sword and pull himself away to keep him out of danger. Makes sense. Maybe give him more damage output at the cost of having the smallest amount of health in the cast. If he's the smallest, that makes sense. Cass is Batgirl. I approve. A beginner-friendly rushdown character, Cass would want to glue herself to the opponent and keep up as much pressure as possible. I dig that. And they make a note of wanting to include Spoiler, Batwoman, Joker, Hush, and Firefly, but they don't know what archetypes they'd give them. we did cover Joker and Firefly, and we did dabble into the idea of Hush being the random select character before. But I think to close it out, how do we fit Spoiler and Batwoman into this, just as a fun little challenge?
Okay, so Batwoman, I don't really think she yeah, that's tough, because Batwoman isn't really defined around a specific playstyle. She actually, okay, what I would definitely see her as is, fuck, I can't remember her name. Who's the military girl from Mortal Kombat who dates Johnny?
Sonya Blade.
Sonya Blade. I would kind of see Batwoman kind of like Sonya.
Okay.
Because they're both, because the one thing that really defines who Batwoman is mechanically is she's the military girl. She's the one who grew up in the military, has basic military training, and I feel that at that point, like, you should base her playstyle off of the other character who is built for the military, which is Sonya Blade.
I think what would be kind of cool is if we combine Sonya Blade from Mortal Kombat with Sergei Dragunov from Tekken. Dragunov is a Spetsnaz agent, and he has a lot of, like, crawls and stances and parries and things that would be really cool to see. And I think what would be fun would be if Batwoman has a special move that's literally just a gun, just a pistol, that she draws from her utility belt and shoots people with. Before we get to Spoiler, I want to give an honorable mention to, and in memoriam of, Bluebird. Poor girl almost made Injustice 2, and I think it would be super cool to have seen Bluebird in this with a bunch of electric-based things, like her magnet fingers and her electric rifle and whatnot.
She would definitely be a Zoners type character with that electric rifle as her main weapon.
Absolutely. And then finally, Spoiler. How are we making Spoiler unique?
That's a hard one too. One thing I could definitely see giving her is that cool 3-piece nunchuck staff that she had during her Batgirl run for a short bit.
Yep.
That would be a cool weapon to give her. That would definitely help diversify her playstyle a little. But also, I kind of see her as basically being a more aggressive version of Tim, where they're both very gadget and trap heavy, but rather, while Damian has his armored shield stance and defensive parries and all that type of stuff that keep him very protective and turtly, Spoiler would be much more aggressive with her things, where she would be using very similar gadgets to screw the opponent's options, but then be much more rushed down in how she uses those gadgets.
Yeah, and plus, purple is always fun. So that basically does it.
Here's a question. Here's a prompt for you.
Uh-huh.
Who would you include as a DLC character? The beauty of DLCs is they don't have to fit with the central theme or stories or mechanics of the game. They don't have to fit with anything going on. They just have to be a fun character who you think would fit well with the established mechanics of the game that you would like to see interact with them.
Okay.
Give me 2 and then I'll come up with 2.
Okay, well, I think I'm gonna cheat and use Mono's list as so Spoiler and Batwoman, but my shouts would be Killer Frost and the new King Shark.
Okay.
Because they're both in the Arkhamverse, and I love Killer Frost. I think she would be a very cool take on a rush-down ice character instead of Mr. Freeze's zoning ice character.
Okay.
And I'm a sucker for big, bestial, big boy monsters, and the new King Shark in the Arkhamverse via Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League is fucking amazing, and I'm here for that. Plus it would make for really good promotion of Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League, so that's something to think about. So who are your picks?
For me, I would pick 2 characters who exist in Gotham, but don't interact with the Gotham stuff. And that is Hitman and Ragman.
Okay, Ragman, I kind of know a little bit about. I think he's Justice Society, right?
No.
Okay, so I don't know him then. So fill us in on who these people
They're very
are.
obscure characters. For the audience, Hitman is a character who debuted in the mid-90s off of the Bloodlines event. Don't bother reading it, it's a terrible event. But he was the one breakout character from it. He is a telepath who has the ability, he just works as an assassin. He's a traditional gunslinging assassin who just has small to moderate telepathic abilities to read other people's minds. And so I would just imagine him being sort of how Mono described Red Hood, where a parry-focused character with guns and firearms who focuses on disabling, on like basically that sort of playstyle where he's it's the word Hitman.
So I'm just picturing. So I apologize, but I'm just picturing him looking like a little bit like Agent 47 minus the barcode on the back of his head.
He actually just looks like the most generic mercenary assassin type character you would see in a story. Just trench coat, black sunglasses, slick black hair.
You know what? That works in his favor because there's so many people that look like that.
Exactly. And I definitely and Hitman's whole kind of defining gimmick as a story is Batman hates him. Because he's a contract killer who goes around killing people for money, but also that he operates in Gotham, and it just pisses Batman off so much. And I would love to see that as an interaction where just Hitman shows up in town, and every line that Batman says is just spitting venom at him at every interval.
Yeah, like it's like Hitman's like, "Hey man, lay off," and Batman's just like, not until your ass is behind bars. And Hitman just goes, jeez, I didn't realize you even swore. I'm picturing him as a very aloof character.
Exactly. Ragman, on the other hand, is very much the opposite, where he is he's had some iterations, but his main defining iteration is he is basically the Jewish Spectre, where he has a suit made of rags that covers his whole body that contains the souls of the damned who he has captured and imprisoned inside the suit, and they all sort of give him enhanced strength and powers because he's drawing on the energy of all the people who are in his suit, and it's sort of a penance style punishment to like serve out your time and serve out your sins by working inside, living in the suit. But he's a Jewish character, and his cloak is supposed to be a golem of sorts.
Oh, and like he's wearing his golem.
Exactly.
Neat.
And I would see him playstyle wise as a very aggressive rushdown type character who has the mimic style ability where he'll have a grab that will lock the opponent into his rags, but rather than deal damage, he will steal the opponent's special, not copy. He will steal it so that the opponent won't be able to use it.
Until he uses it, then the opponent can use it again. But that is cool. Like, I'm picturing him kind of like Jewish Shang Tsung. Kind of.
I know. But I'm not familiar with Shang Tsung.
Shang Tsung is the main bad guy from Mortal Kombat. His whole shtick is that he eats souls in order to keep his youth, and he can also use the souls that he's absorbed to mimic people. So one of his gimmicks is that in the middle of a fight, he can steal your soul for a limited amount of time and be you. But one of the cool things about it is that he actually does more damage while he's in the same form. But his caveat is that he can only be it for a short period of time before he has to transform, before he forces himself to transform back into himself, and that leaves him open to attack.
Right.
So
I wouldn't see the full copying the opponent's moveset, but rather just being able to steal one of their supers or one of their special combos, and then just after he does the move, maybe the move itself will deal a little bit of extra damage, and then the opponent will get it back.
Yeah, because it's almost like you're punishing a character for using a specific sort of crazy move. It's just like, hey, stop it.
Exactly.
That's actually really cool, and that is gonna take us to over 2 hours. So sweet.
Nice.
Don't forget to be awesome, my friends. I know I know a lot of other people wanted to get in on this, and unfortunately timing was just rough. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and nudge everybody to kind of send their concepts their way, and then I'll make a little follow-up video about that.
Okay.
And December, oh god, December is going to be a WraithCast holiday special, which we're going to have to figure out how we're going to do that. And then, like the Halloween one, it's just going to be our experiences with the holidays, whether you celebrate Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Yule, or Christmas, whichever one of those thingamajigs work.
Yeah.
Alright, don't forget to be awesome, my friends, and I'll see you guys on the other side.
Okay then.